This is my top 5 games. Today on... I'm not doing it.
It's good because it's a dead. It's a dead joke, Palsh. For fuck's sakes, we must move on. Okay, relationships have lasted shorter periods than this joke. The joke is so old, it's retro.
Oh, see, that's why we got to keep this going. Yeah, man, I got requests to do that in other people's streams. Okay?
Bullshit. Who requested that? I want names.
I was playing Valheim with Blitzbrom and his friends, and then Sinistar was in there, me twin.
Right.
And he's like, I need some mouth sounds, so I had to do it.
Is this like the battle cry of the streaming generation?
It is now.
Fuck.
Fuck, yeah.
Time to move over to, what's left? Caffeine? D-Live?
Yeah. I don't know what that is, but sure, let's do that. I know what caffeine is, but...
Like a mixer's dead, so there's still a little competition left. Anyway.
Yeah. We just start streaming on Discord from now on. Less ads. But anyways, today we're going to talk about my favorite games. And God damn it, Jake, making me choose hurts. All right. So this is going to be my favorite games for tonight because I don't like putting things on like one over the other. I can't do it. So these are 5 games that I really, really care about. They're ones that I want to play again. Actually, no. One of them I won't, but we'll get into that.
Well, it's only fair because we did my top 5 a couple episodes back. So, and hey, Google and SEO love top lists. So let's get to it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So today we're going to do Palsh's top 5 for today. The list will change depending on the day of the week. That's one thing.
Yeah.
What I've eaten today. Have I drank a lot of water? Things like that.
So what if you have like your famous barley hamburgers? You are in the mood for what? JRPGs?
Oh yeah. If anything's gonna put me in the mood for JRPG, it's gonna be a beef and barley burger.
Something that really slows down those bowel movements.
Oh yeah, makes them really good. But no, we've already had that discussion. Okay,
that's right. You're right. Can't rehash.
April Fools.
Oh no. Save this.
Okay, right on. Okay, so I'm gonna go with the guilty pleasure right off the bat. I want to get this out because I'm not proud of it. I'm not playing it anymore. It's not Warframe, although that is. That's not a guilty pleasure. I didn't like it that much.
Don't tell me.
If I was playing it, if it.
Go ahead. I know what you're gonna say. Say it.
Mega Man Soccer.
What? Mega Man Soccer?
I just fucking with you. Yeah. Right. Jake knows what's coming. Say it, Jake. Just say it.
World of Warcraft. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Okay. So I want to say like it was a good thing for me when I played it. I came into probably like Burning Crusade was probably newish and Wrath of the Lich King wasn't out or it was about to be out, something like that. It was just something I needed in my life at the time. So I played a lot of it. My old man passed away and that was kind of like my grieving mechanism. You know, I didn't realize it, how addicted I was to the damn thing. Cause I mean, it's like the computer version of a Skinner box. It just knows they know how to keep you hooked. They got it. Blizzard has nailed it when it comes to just, giving you that little dopamine hit. So, but yeah, it was kind of like this thing, like old man was gone and, just trying to come to terms with it. It was the first time I ever lost anybody in my family. So I was like, okay, I didn't know how to handle it. And so it was just like, shut off your brain. And that's exactly what WoW was. And, so it was great. I'd get up and just play WoW and, go back to sleep. It was just, the stereotype, in the basement, never leaving. And as shitty as that is, it was something I needed at the time, so it was great. Made a lot of friends online. This was when I first started playing PC games with people besides like StarCraft on, like modem. Dad, can I play StarCraft for, like an hour or something? Or it's like, can I play a game up with my friend online for an hour? So you'd have to take up the phone line so nobody could call. We had to make sure too, because we didn't have a second phone line, because that would cost a lot of money. But anyways, yeah. No, it was just something I really liked. The story itself, like the gameplay itself, it really hooked me at first. I don't care for it now. Like, I played the latest expansion and it plays exactly like the original that I've played. So
right.
Gameplay, it hasn't changed. It hasn't really evolved. They put in a few new mechanics here and there. Things change. They balance this. They nerf this, boost that. It's all in all, it's the same thing, but I like it for the story, and that's the biggest thing for me, is the actual story behind it all. The lore in something that's been going this long, for an MMO that's been going this long, it's we were talking with Dave about Valheim, and you have that emergent narrative, as you're playing, you have all these, the gameplay is kind of simple, the story is kind of fill in the blanks, it's more what you experience as opposed to what they make you experience. And that's what it was for me for a lot of things, not necessarily in the game, but just like the social aspect and things like that. So it was something new that I never really had before. And, meeting fellow nerds on the same kind of scale too. You find a good guild, you're having fun with that. It was kind of neat. So.
Yeah. And so I don't want to bash it, because I had my WoW phase too. I swear. I think we all have at some point. But yeah. For me, it was also the social aspect. I lost touch with a few friends from high school after I moved on my own, had a rough patch. And when that came out, when that first trailer hit with the dwarf with the gun, like, I was a huge Blizzard fan back then. And their cinematics and their lore, like you said, are a big part of that. So I was all over that game. And there was a real social aspect to with friends, but also meeting new people online, much like yourself. And I was into it. I got into it very deep for a number of years. But it's weird now. Like, multiplayer games like that have changed a lot in terms of, I feel like, the social side of it. Now, if I play an online game like that, like Elder Scrolls Online, or or Warframe, I guess, or Final Fantasy 14 is a good one. I don't want to join a guild. I don't need that time commitment.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I'd rather play with somebody who I'm more familiar with, like you guys. Like I talk to you guys online daily, I think, at this point. But I'm friends with you guys. I'd rather play with friends than try and be social with strangers in MMOs. But 10 years ago, totally different. I was fine with that aspect.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that's what it was. Like, I was playing Shadowlands, the latest expansion, with friends, and that was the only time I was doing any like dungeons or like the LFR looking for raid, where it's basically just queue up for a raid, and it's a whole lot more easy, you know, so it's kind of just pick up and go. I wouldn't do any of that because the player base gets so toxic.
Oh yeah.
With, people playing in PvP, I get it, and stuff like that. They're a lot more hardcore, but this was like, some guys just talking trash about you. And I'm just like, I just want to play this game and have fun. I don't want to be berated for not knowing the mechanics for something the first time I've been there. So like, the player base is probably what threw me away from it back in Legion when I was playing it the most, because I was playing with friends. That was me with real life friends, like 5 or 6 of us at a time. And so that was really good because it was the social aspect, but with actual friends, not just online ones. So it felt like something more. But it was great, but I just can't go back to it. Like, it was more of a life experience that I can look back on fondly for the most part.
Yeah.
Until I type in like /played or whatever it is and find out how much time I actually
how old your character is.
Yeah. So no, it's cool. I keep on threatening to start reading the books because I love the lore. I just have no interest in playing the game anymore. So
the books are a decent. I can't remember the series I read, but I did read a trilogy of books, one of the earlier ones. and I like it. I'm a sucker for fantasy lore, and
yeah,
Blizzard honestly made amazing worlds. StarCraft, World of Warcraft, like great stuff. Diablo, I love all that stuff. It's just things have changed with MMOs.
Yeah, it's a different beast, and like it's an aging, like I don't want to say business model. It's like an aging experience, so you need something different, because if you play one MMO, you pay them all, it feels like.
Yeah.
You go up and they have the auto attack, and then you just have the global cooldowns on all your attacks and stuff like that. So then you have classes, and there's always a tank, there's always a healer, there's always DPS, ranged or melee. So this one, like, I never got into another MMO because one time sync was enough.
Yeah.
So
the only one that felt different to me was Elder Scrolls Online, right? When it launched, it was rough. But the state it's in now, the combat is more action-oriented. It feels less like the auto attack of classic MMOs. But even then, when you sit down and play it for enough, you still see the familiar like systems at work of mob spawning, camping, dungeon. Like it's still, that genre has not aged well, I think, for anybody. But I get it. World of Warcraft nostalgia for sure. Like, how far are we from saying this is retro at this point? Like, we're almost there.
Yeah, I mean, some like it playing, what is it, 2004 when it actually came out. So I mean, that's almost old enough to buy its own smokes. That qualifies as retro for me.
It's that angsty teenager phase now. It's almost there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's something. Again, I look back on it, so it's one of those things. I love the like how iconic a lot of things are. The Death Knights are my class. That's anything to do with Death Knights is cool. If I could do like a cosplay out of nowhere, it would be like the starting zone, like the starting gear for a Death Knight, because I just always loved that. That's what I'd run around in the game, is the starting gear, because I just loved it.
Did they end up doing other hero classes? Because that was a special class. I remember when that came out. That's what hooked me to come back for a bit, was Death Knights, and their opening area was the story, I think, was well done.
Yeah, I've done that opening thing so many times, because I'm just like, I just want to stick with a Death Knight, so I'll start a new one, play with friends on a different server, and I'm like, okay, start it over. I almost have it like memorized, like the quest order at this point. So but yeah, no, they have a Demon Hunters is another one that they put out with Legion.
Right. Yeah, that was Legion, right.
So that one was pretty cool, but it wasn't for me. So it's not a Death Knight.
It is fun though. Like you said, you go back to it and you just still pick the same class, even though you've done it before, because that was always supposed to be the appeal of these games, where you can play the different races, different starting areas. But I was the same every single time. I'd make a new character. I'd come back after years. It'd be a night elf, usually a druid, and I'd go through the whole opening thing again.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like I used to play as a priest back in like Lich King when I was playing it after, my old man and all that. So that was cool. And I played it, but I wasn't even healing. I was just playing it. I didn't realize it. So I leveled Holy, which was insanely long.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, I never healed a dungeon basically until I was like a couple months into being endgame. So I was just, farting around. But I switched to Death Knight in Legion when I started playing with friends, because they were like, oh, you want a tank? I was like, no. And he's like, no, man, it's easy. Trust me. And I tried it, and I was like, this is fun, because instant queue and all that. So, but no, the stories are great. I just, no interest in the game. So yeah, I'm going to go for the books next. So this one, we could talk about this one in a whole new episode.
Oh, yeah.
I think we should eventually, actually. But just not today. I got 4 other games to talk about.
Yeah, I have a whole wide experience with MMOs, so I'll table that for another episode.
There you go. Okay, so next one, I'm going to go step it back a little bit. So this one actually is retro. This one I'm going to go with Breath of Fire for SNES.
Breath of Fire, that's the Capcom JRPG, right?
Yeah, Capcom made it, but Squaresoft published it, I think is how it worked.
Okay.
But the way it plays compared to the second one, I really think that Squaresoft had a lot more to do with it than Capcom, because the second one is a lot more janky, really poorly translated. It's got great art and stuff, but it was so rough. And this one plays like a Final Fantasy game. It's got It's got a lot more action themes, the music and stuff. It's just the way it works. It's a Square game, as far as I'm concerned. If it's not, it is to me.
So I never played Breath of Fire. So what kind of hooked you on this one? Was the story really good?
I like the story. Well, first off, I mean, I read the manual before I play any game when I was renting games. That's what you do on the way home, right?
Yeah.
There's a walkthrough for like, it's got to be like 3/4 of the game in the manual itself or something.
Oh, it was a thick manual.
Ridiculous.
Then.
Yeah. It was those. Thick. Yeah. So I was like, it was one of those games where like I'm only like a 3-minute drive away from the rental place. That's what it was. So this one I didn't even have the manual read, and I was like, oh man, okay. But I started playing with my brother. I got 2 older brothers, and I was playing this one with my middle brother, we didn't get along. He was always a dick to me. He was always like the bully and stuff like that, and I was the shitty, like little annoying little brother. So, we were destined not to get along that well. But this is one we sat down and played with, and it was just neat to play because he was kind of like in awe of it. I was a little young for it compared to him because he's almost 10 years older, and so he was just kind of like, oh man, this is really cool. So I just, again, it was kind of like playing Final Fantasy IV for the first time, or 2 on Super Nintendo.
Right.
I got to see my brothers, and their excitement is what got me excited over it. And that's kind of what happened with Breath of Fire. You play as a character that gets to turn into dragons. So, I mean, that's badass.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting.
You got long hair, you got long blue hair, you turn into a dragon. There's a girl that's basically an angel. She's walking around with wings, and she turns into a bird and fly. Like, that's your airship. You fly as her.
Oh.
There's this giant ox, literally named Ox, who has a giant hammer and stuff like that. The characters were real. Like, I'm used to Final Fantasy games at this point. I played the hell out of 4. I played Mystic Quest. This was probably like the next one I got into, and they had all these characters. They weren't all human. They weren't all Caucasian humans too.
Well, so that's great because like most, like you said, Final Fantasy games, it's yet another Cid or, another character like that, another Dragoon. Okay. There's a lot of similarities between the characters, and it's very bland. And there's always like a few standout characters, but you're right. There's never other races, which is really interesting.
Right. And that's what I liked about this, because you got a human that turns into a dragon, the girl that turns into birds, the whole town of people that turn into birds, like they're royalty and stuff. They have a fish dude who's like this greedy salesman, and you can actually act as the salesman in a shop in this game. That's one of the things that hooked me. I thought that was so cool. You could be the shopkeeper, and people would run to you and try to sell their stuff. You could like barter with them a little bit. It was so weird, but you could get some cool items from it. So I'd stand there for like an hour on end just trying to sell crap and buy crap. You had Bo, who was a guy that was like, they talked to him like he was just human, but he was like a wolf. He was almost like a werewolf, but he was just a wolf man.
Okay.
And he's an archer. So I thought that was really cool. Who else is there's a mole that digs through stuff. He's a little tiny dude. He wasn't all that great to me, but I thought like it was just something different. And then you have this like snake lady, this Lamia, whatever you want to call it, Blue, who's like the powerhouse mage, and she's like, centuries old and, smoking hot kind of deal. So
well, there's got at least one of those, yeah.
Oh, there's at least, right? So they have all these characters, and there's just so much character behind all of them. There's a thief, which is one thing I really liked, is the fact that the thief would fuse with other characters. So you basically have everybody but 1 or 2 characters you could play as, because they would all meld into one. And that was another thing that I just thought was so cool. So there was a lot of things in this that I never saw in a Final Fantasy game. And so it was something different that I really enjoyed. Again, the fact that there were these fantasy creatures, and a lot of them weren't really treated any different than the rest of the humans in the game. So I thought that was really cool. It's this world where it's established. It's not like Lord of the Rings, where hobbits can be likened to, stoners and stuff like that. And, you can draw all these parallels and stuff like that. But these ones, it was just like everybody's human, and that was it. Even though this guy's a fish, this guy's a wolf, this guy's an ox. So I just thought that was really neat. The music is great. The battle system is a little bit different than a Final Fantasy game, but it's very simplified and it's straightforward, and that's what I liked. It was really easy to pick up. There's just a bunch of little things that really added up for me. The art style especially was really fun.
So how long is this one? Is it like Final Fantasy, like 60 hours type of deal?
Look, I'm not remembering now because it's been so long since I beat it, but I don't have the clock. I don't have the clock anymore, right? Like later games like Final Fantasy 7 and on, where they always have the timer show you how long you've actually been playing.
Right.
This one I never really noticed. It could have been 30 hours. It could have been 60. It could have been 90 for all I know. Yeah, but it never really felt long. It always felt like I was looking forward to the next section and the next section. It was the way the story went. It just felt good to me.
Yeah, I always feel like for me in Breath of the Wild, I was always on the fence of, like, I always wanted to play it. I just never had the opportunity to. And now it's been like, decades. And every time I want to go back to a JRPG, it ends up being Chrono Trigger, mostly because of the length, right? I know I like it, but you got me wanting to look into this one because it does sound very cool and different, which is rare in some RPGs. Like, a lot of them feel the same.
Yeah. I mean, there's things you can do too. Like, I know the grind can be insane.
Right.
In this one, you can use like marble threes, I think it is. It's one of those ones where they always have the words shortened down and it looks like it says marble. Maybe it's like mirror ball, there's
right.
You always kind of wonder. But like T-Bolt instead of Thunderbolt and stuff like that. The second one actually got ridiculous with them, and it got confusing as hell. So I was just, okay. But you can use the marble threes to avoid random encounters. So if you just want to grind in a heavy zone, get a few levels, you can do that. And then screw it, use the marble threes and go on through the rest of it. Like, just save yourself the effort. It's just little things like that make it more satisfying for me. It makes it a little bit more streamlined. The people will complain about any JRPG, anyways, a turn-based one, about the encounter rate is always insane. It's always worse than you remember.
Yeah.
But I think that's just the way we're aging.
Well, that was the genre
we've got it so much easier,
right? 3 steps you had to fight, and you're right. Nowadays, I can't stand it. But back then, it was fine.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just something I really got to enjoy. I played the second one and I barely beat it. It was tough. It was long. It was really, really, really grindy. The second one I wouldn't suggest to everyone. Just people who want to try it. That's who I'd suggest. If they're already on the fence, I'd say, yeah, give it a shot. Otherwise, no. But like, there's a bunch of these games, and this is the one that stands out for me, and it's nothing like the other ones. Like, I played the third one for a bit on PlayStation. I didn't care. I never got to play anything after that. There's like 5 or 6 of them. And
was there that many? I didn't realize it was that long of a series. I know it jumped to 3D with the PlayStation, but I didn't realize that long.
They jumped to 3D in PlayStation with 3, and then there's a 4th one, and I think the 5th one, I don't know if it's Dragon Quarter or if it's just Breath of Fire 5. I can't remember. I think it's 5. But Dragon Quarter is another one, and I don't know anything about that. So
okay.
But yeah, there's something about this one that it stood out. It felt different than the rest of them. The rest of them really felt a lot more, I guess, Japanese. There's a little bit more, like they're a little bit more heavy on the anime side of it. It's just the way it plays and the way the art direction's gone. It doesn't hit me the same way. So this one really stood out because it stands apart from the rest.
All right. Cool choice.
Yeah. So this one I had to leave right for the middle. This is going to be my third choice. This is one that I actually didn't care about. I didn't want to play. My friend lent it to me on 360. He gave me this one and Red Dead Redemption. I played Red Dead Redemption because I was like, okay, cool. I knew what that was about. But he gave me this one and I played it afterwards and I was instantly hooked, and it started my obsession with the Dark Knight. It's Batman. Arkham. Well, I'm going to go. So Arkham Asylum is the one that got me going, but also Arkham City is what kept me coming back. So Arkham City is probably one of the greatest games I've ever played.
It's definitely influential on the combat of many different games. It's a solid title. I've never finished it, but I've seen you play it quite a bit, and I played a bit myself. It's a good game.
Yeah, it's like the first one is just a polished version of Arkham Asylum, but it's got more open world elements to it. You can do more exploring. There's a lot more you can have fun with and more optional things. Arkham Knight is actually my favorite story-wise, but this one is game-wise, it's way more fun. It's not so big, it's not so overwhelming, it's just right. There's so many cool characters. The voice acting is insane. You've got Mark Hamill as the Joker. You have
iconic
Kevin Conroy. Yeah, exactly. And Kevin Conroy as Batman, and that's the two things that make it what it is.
Yeah.
So that alone is worth playing it. If if you grew up watching the cartoon, like the Batman Superman adventures, this is something you should play. The combat, if you play it on normal, it's fair. It's not that hard. It's not a button masher for anybody who hasn't played it. It's not like God of War where you can just mash the buttons as much as you want and basically get out alive. This one is just timing. It's punch, block, stun, and jump essentially. And that's the combat. And most of it's automated, so you just punch, block when you need to block. Otherwise, you get hit. And if you just try to button mash and just go punch like you would in God of War, you're going to die pretty quick. But when you actually start doing the combos and hitting a counterattack and stuff like that, it gets really satisfying. It makes you feel like a badass.
And you have to use the right attack for the right enemy too, if I remember correct. Like some,
right?
I can't remember the combos. So some with weapons you have to use like the stun attack or something, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So there's different mechanics for different enemies. Most of them you can just beat the crap out of. So there's guys with like stun batons. You have to basically get behind them. There's guys with like a riot shield kind of deal. You have to swipe them with your cape to stun them, and then you jump up on them and basically come back down on them with like from above.
Yeah.
There's other. It's just you can use your gadgets. You can use batarangs. You can use the grappling hook. You can use all these things in the middle of a fight to just do it. There's actually an achievement that I've never gotten in any of the games because it's a matter of using all your QuickTime gadgets, which is usually like 8 by the time you get them all, if not more. And you need to use them all. So like in one combo, in one fight.
Okay.
So not missing a hit, not getting hit, and using everything. So instead of just like going from punch, counterattack, or block, whatever you want to call it, and like the swipe, like the stunning with the cape and jumping away, all of a sudden you have to go left one to throw a batarang, or hold left one and triangle to throw the grappling hook and haul them towards you, or double tap R2 to throw something at them to stun them. So it's just ridiculous what you can do in this game. And I don't want to watch like pros playing this and like just doing all these crazy things because I don't want to feel bad about myself. This game makes you feel like a badass, and I just do not want to have that bar raised on me.
The animations in it is what really sold it for me in the combat, because you don't have to, like, it's a controller game, and this is one of the first controller games I started playing on my PC, and I don't have to worry about the precision of a mouse to play games when it's Batman, because just being in the general direction of an enemy when you throw that attack, you kind of, the game conforms to what you want to do in combat.
Exactly.
And it's just a button timing game. And like influential, like there was a good 6-7 years, I think, where every review of any other third person type game, they're like, oh yeah, it has the Batman combat. And that goes back to Arkham Asylum and Arkham City, where it was so influential on third person action games with combat using the different attacks like that. Although Batman, I think, always did it far better than like Assassin's Creed and all them other ones. Just the gadgets and the gameplay was a lot more tighter. It's a really great series. I've only played the first 2 myself.
They're great. Like people complain about Origins. Origins is a prequel, so their order of release was Arkham Asylum, and that just went off the charts. People loved it. Arkham City came out, which is probably touted as the best of all of them. And then they had a prequel for it, which is, you're basically just become Batman. Enemies and like criminals have an idea of who he is, but they're more like, oh, it's that Bat guy. I heard of him, and the next thing you know, you're kicking the shit out of him. But that one was being made just to keep people sated while they were working on Arkham Knight, because Arkham Knight was coming out on PS4, and so they were basically and Xbox One, so it was the next gen one. So they had a different team working on Origins. It's not as good, but it's still pretty damn good, I gotta say. They don't have Mark Hamill or Kevin Conroy in that one, but the voice acting is not subpar, I gotta say. And it kind of works too, because they don't have Kevin Conroy for Batman, but he's barely Batman at this point. Like, he's just become Batman, so it's a young one. He's got like stubble on his face. He's just kind of utilitarian more than perfect human specimen that he is in the other games. So it's kind of cool that it works for it. It works in its favor. But so Arkham City is the one we want to focus on here, because that it's just so good. All the main characters in Batman's Rogue Gallery are there, and Penguin, he doesn't fight very well, so he relies on guns and his goons.
So his Riddler character design, though, if I remember right, isn't it it's a broken Coke bottle for the monocle, I think?
He's got a beer bottle lodged into his eye socket, and that instead of a monocle, and it's actually
amazing character design. Like, it's a dark tone for sure, because I grew up on the cartoon Batman, which is not that, but I really love what they do with the character designs, especially the bad guys.
Yeah, they just nailed it. Like, they have the Riddler is, is not Jim Carrey campy. He's just kind of like this. They all have this kind of narcissistic, egomaniacal kind of thing going to him, but he's kind of like this social outcast, who thinks he's smarter than everybody else, and he just wants to prove it. So he's just like that guy that's in the basement tinkering with stuff just to try to fuck with Batman or anybody else, that just to prove a point. Then you have like Two-Face. Two-Face is in there, and he's not even like just arguing with Batman. Like, he doesn't get along with Catwoman. He doesn't get along with Penguin and stuff. They all have these kind of what would you call it? Like truces, essentially. They all work with each other differently, and the way it works, it's just like there's this whole world within it, and you don't have to be a huge comic book fan to understand it all, because the way the game is, the way the story is told, and all the extra stuff that you can read, like in menus as unlockables and stuff, it fills in all the blanks for you. So you feel like everything you need to know. You're not questioning stuff, and that's part of what makes this game so good. I mean, the gameplay itself is just amazing, but other than that, like the way the story's put together, the way it ties into the DC universe, it's like, I can't say how I would improve it.
Yeah, I like that, because for a game like this, it's a gritty take on Batman. There's just enough realism to sell it, right? Like you just said, the bad guys are all narcissistic. They're obviously egomaniacs. I mean, you'd have to be the type of bad guy who dresses up in tights in the morning, right? Like, you need something to tie them together. And the loose alliances and stuff, right? Makes sense when they're all have their own egos to satisfy. So it makes sense, and it feels really well done.
Yeah, it's probably one that I would put for anybody to play, whether you're a fan of action games or not. It's that good. So, and
for a game from the 360 era, I mean, which is still fine, but even today, graphics hold up, man. That game still looks great, especially Arkham City.
Exactly. Yeah, it's aged better than most games. Like, newer games don't look as good as this. So, yeah, it's like, again, I could talk about that one for an entire episode too. So, I mean, any of these games are really good. So we'll probably go on to another one here. This one took me by surprise. We'll go on to my fourth game here. For the quick recap, we got World of Warcraft, the guilty pleasure, Breath of Fire, which is, the black sheep almost for me. Then Batman, Arkham City, part of my obsession with Batman. And then now I have one that took me by surprise. I didn't realize how much I would love this game. Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
See, this one's surprising for you because that game's good.
It was surprising for me because I never knew about it. I never had any magazines. I never heard of it until I played it. And it was probably out for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years by the time I actually played it.
Okay.
And I went to the video store, the one that was 3 minutes away. I was looking through it, and it was basically a little shack. It was like a hallway sized shop that some dude built on the side of his house. So it was basically just an extension of his house, one wall with all the stuff for all the movies and stuff, and then junk food, all the chips, popcorn, all that stuff. And since he had all the movies were the main thing and games weren't, the main draw for the video store rentals, he had, instead of having all the carts up there like you'd have, or the boxes like you would in Blockbuster or anything like that,
right?
He had a book, just like a duotang from from elementary school, and it was just filled with pages where he'd either cut out the covers to the manuals, or he'd take clippings from a magazine review or something like that, so you could have a screenshot of it. And he just added those in. And so you just flick through the book and give him the number that was for the game. So it was 117 or 226, stuff like that. And so I just was flicking through, and I was like, I want to play something on PlayStation. And this is probably 98, 99, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to say 99.
So. After Final Fantasy VII, I think, for sure. But again, I think much like you, I also played it, I think, way after it came out.
Yeah, so I didn't even know, and I was just like, hey, I remember because it stood out because it was the manual. He just cut the cover off the manual and stuck that in there. So you couldn't see any, I didn't know that it was Alucard. I thought it was, I was like, oh, I hope it's Simon this time because Simon was my favorite. And so I played it and I brought it home, and immediately it was just like, this is cool. You run in, Alucard's just running through the forest super speed and barely makes it in through the moat, and then you finally take control of him. And I was like, this is, wow, that caught my attention. And then you run over a couple of screens over and you see Death, and I'm like, oh shit, because Death's always the second last boss in a Castlevania game. So I was like, oh no. And what happens? He starts talking. I was like, what the fuck? So dialogue in a Castlevania game. I'm like, that's cool. Voice acting too. I was like, okay.
In hindsight, it's cheesy voice acting, but at the time, still really cool.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right? I mean, this is where voice acting was started. This is the era where it was just becoming new. So it was, let's get somebody to say these lines. We don't hire professional voice actors. We hire somebody who's probably already working on the game, or a friend of a friend kind of thing. It's a nobody kind of deal. And the fact that you start, even before you control Alucard, it was the end of Dracula X, of Richter. Rondo of Blood. Yeah. So you get to play through that, and they make it easy enough so you can just fly through it. So you beat the game and you're like, oh man, that was awesome. I feel strong. And then you start over as Alucard, and again, all of a sudden you're this badass. All your stuff gets stolen, and you're like, what the so, it's the fact that you can go back and forth in this one, and it's not just straightforward left to right like in the rest of the games. It was just mind-blowing to me. The music was good. I mean, this is CD quality music all of a sudden, not MIDI. You have these orchestrated things. This is one of the first times I ever played a game where there's an actual electric guitar. They have somebody playing a guitar in there instead of just, having a guitar kind of sound font in a chip tune. So it was just so cool in every way. It started this fanboy thing for me for the whole series. I wanted to go back. They had all these references to the old games, but it fleshed it out in a way that it was like, oh, okay, cool. It's not just the Belmonts. Why am I this guy? And so it filled in some blanks that needed to be filled in. And Castlevania's, let's just put it this way, it's always been a mess when it comes to the timeline.
Oh yeah, it's like Zelda in that regard, right? None of it makes sense.
Yeah.
None of it.
Yeah, I think, but I mean, at this point, aren't like all the Zeldas basically supposed to be their own like interpretation, like their own separate universes? Like Zelda and Link in Ocarina of Time are not the same ones as in like Link to the Past or Link's Awakening and stuff.
Yeah, like the problem is Nintendo's retconned it themselves, I think, several times. So it's like Final Fantasy, honestly. You got to treat each game as it's, like you said, a reimagining of the world and just take it for what it is, right?
Right, yeah. So they were trying to build, they weren't doing that with this. They were building on the lore of it. And there's been enough screw ups along the way that this already did need a retcon poorly. Like they really did it. They tried to do a retcon. That's what Lords of Shadow was, and that failed miserably. But we won't talk about that.
No, like as much as I can appreciate the NES Castlevania games, I never could get into them. But when I first played Symphony of the Night, the first thing that kind of struck out is the loading areas between levels, and it just like, this is Super Metroid. This is totally Super Metroid. Go between zones. There's that tunnel.
Yes.
And then the items and the power-ups. I like it. Maybe, I might say I almost like it better than Super Metroid. Just for the sheer amount of items in the game. Like it's deep.
I think what appeals to me in this one is more of the story too. Like something that blows my mind about Super Metroid is how much story is told without any words.
Yeah.
Like they tell you a story through the experience. You go through this, you go through that, you fight Kraid, you fight Dragon, you fight all these ones. Nothing gets said except for, escape the planet kind of thing. The last Metroid is in captivity, the galaxy is at peace, you go back, So that's most of it there. But this one, as cheesy as it was with the shitty voice acting, it's like, watching a horror movie in the campiness of like Army of Darkness or Evil Dead. It's part of the appeal and that's part of the charm, and that's what it is for me. So, I mean, look how many people got pissed when they re-released the game for, was it PS4?
Yeah, they changed the script and the acting, which, why would you do that? Like, for this game?
Yeah, so, I mean, like, that just shows, like, it's iconic. It's become a classic, and for a good reason. It's started its own genre.
Yeah.
I mean, Metroid and Castlevania. So you have a, Metroidvania, and this is the original Metroidvania, really. And it's spawned an entire genre of Castlevania games. People always will fight over what's better, the Nintendo retro ones or the Metroidvanias, and people like, I like this one. No, I like this one. And a lot of the time there's no in between. It's like you hate one and you love the other. I like them both equally. I can't choose. But this one, this is the best of them. Like I'll take the ones that came out afterwards because they were fun, but this is the one that got it right 100% of the way. It wasn't just a cash grab. They went for something and they succeeded.
What was your favorite weapon in the game? Because there's a lot of weapon types in Symphony of the Night.
Man. You know what? I really liked one of the daggers that you get in the game because you could attack so fast with it. And you get next to no range out of it. Like, it's slightly better than like using the brass knuckles where you just punch.
Right.
But it was just something fun about it. The fact that I'd just run up to something and I'd duck and just start stabbing stuff in the legs. by the time they came close enough to hit me, I usually had them killed because it was that.
I think for me it was I think it's in the inverted castle, and it was the Sword of Dawn, I want to say. It was the two-handed sword that you could summon skeletons with it, which I thought was just really hilarious.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, there's just so really many cool. great weapons in that game.
Yeah, I remember like there's the Zweihander and the two-handed sword, and one that would I think it was the Zweihander that it would swing out in an arc, like you basically throw it into this arc and it would come back to you.
Oh, really?
So come so it would go halfway across the screen, and for some reason it would say verboten when it would go, like you'd see the words in like the after image of the animation, which just is German for forbidden.
Right.
And I don't know what that was. I never did look that up, but yeah, it's just these little things that they did. I remember just watching interviews with Igarashi.
Right.
And because he was the director, and like he basically just did some of the coding, but he was more giving free reign to the team because they were just like, I want to try this, I want to try that. So there's these tiny little details, and they just, most of them don't match up with anything, but because it's Castlevania, and I mean, you play the original Castlevania, it's like, you know, Universal Studios made a game because you're fighting Frankenstein's monster, you're fighting Dracula, you're fighting Medusa, all these characters, you know, they just mashed up, and they did it in a way in this one that somehow feels like it's meant to be in this universe. So
it's definitely the details. Like I remember the shield rod, which seems like comical that Alucard is going to use a rod, but you tie it with the various shields, which there's more than a few, and they all have a special effect. Like who does? Yep. Nobody does that nowadays, right? Such a wide assortment of weapons, and one particular weapon that you could easily miss has such unique mechanics with other items in the game. Like it's really well done. It's fun.
Yeah, it's just, there's so many little things that add up, and that's what's really cool about it. It's not, I don't love it because of the cheesy voice acting. That's just one of the reasons I do enjoy it. But these little details is one of those things where it made me want to go up and look on fan sites and read all about it. So I remember going on the Castlevania Dungeon, it was called, and it was just this fan site made by one guy, and he just had anything that referenced anything in a game. He had like the timelines in there and showed the inconsistencies and how this wouldn't work, and the different like the ancestry of the entire Belmont clan and how they all worked, who was whose parent and stuff like that. It was just something I could get lost in, and it was basically like going down a wiki rabbit hole after you play a game. That's what I was doing back then, before that's something people really commonly did.
Right. Yeah, it's solid game. Really a solid game.
Yeah.
Like when I think PlayStation, that's the first game I think that comes to mind most often as one I want to play. Right. Final Fantasy 7, it's like, I like that game, but if I'm installing an emulator on a new device and I have to check out PSX, it's Castlevania is the first one I go to.
Yeah. And it's probably one of the best selling ones. It's probably one of the most common ones. If you look it up like on emulator sites and stuff, they're always the first. That's always the first one. So
right.
And when it beats out Final Fantasy VII, which is, you know, one of the biggest selling games of all times, and the most number of spin-offs and biggest franchise of video games, is like, it's pretty insane to think about it, that this one game stands above all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, I mean, these are easy choices for me. I mean, Castlevania Symphony of the Night, I haven't met anyone who doesn't like it unless they just really like the other Castlevanias more. You know, Arkham City is like in my eyes a perfect game. You know, most people that I've played will agree with me. You know, Breath of Fire is kind of a personal thing. People don't, you know, either never played it or just it kind of passed over them. And World of Warcraft, you know, I'm not the only person that got addicted to that. You know, again, Blizzard knows what they're doing. But the last one on my list here is one that it is just kind of like a rite of passage for me, and I still love it. I haven't played the original here in years. They've already made a remake for it, but which I also love.
Not what I thought it is. Then.
Okay, well, what did you think it was going to be?
I swear you're going to say like Final Fantasy IV.
See, Final Fantasy IV is one of my favorite games of all time, but I've talked about that. I've beaten that dead horse too many times. I didn't want to give people that. I wanted to give something else. So this is one that I'm going to go with. Again, this is rite of passage for me. I was like 14, maybe 15, something. I'd say 14. Is Resident Evil 2 for PlayStation 1.
Okay. Interesting choice. So
the reason for this is what makes it a rite of passage for me is that I was a terrified kid. I was really sheltered. My parents, like, you know, one step away from a bubble because I was just spoiled rotten, you know?
Right.
And so I remember my brother renting Resident Evil 1. And we borrowed, I don't know if we rented the PlayStation or we borrowed it from somebody, but we had a PlayStation. I remember playing Battle Arena Toshinden. So proud of myself. My brother came back with Resident Evil 1. We got to try this. I heard it's amazing. And we tried it, and I saw the first zombie, you know, the one that's chewing on Buddy's neck. Yeah. And then you get that cutscene where he looks back at you. and then he starts coming after you. And I was like, oh shit. And I was like, I'm not into horror movies. I was scared of horror movies. I remember my brother trying to show me Return of the Jedi for the first time. I thought it was a horror movie. I was scared to watch it until we watched it. And I was like, oh, this is cool. So I was really just scared of anything that was kind of spooky if it wasn't like on YTV. That was my limit. Are You Afraid of the Dark kind of stuff? That's the kind of things I was watching. Goosebumps. And so this terrified me. I was like 12 years old and I had to sleep with my parents for a year. I was shit fucking scared of this, and it's priceless. Like, I remember wanting to sleep on a certain side of the bed as a kid because I was like, there's more people on this side of the town than there is on that side of the town, so I don't want to be on the emptier side because I want like more people between me and the zombies. I somehow thought that this could actually happen, kind of deal. Like, it was just stupid.
There are legit jump scares in that game. Like, there's some good parts that game that got me when I first played it. It's good too.
Just the first zombie. Like, I never saw very far past that, to be honest. I saw like a couple of the huge spiders and the zombies, and like the blood spraying out like a geyser when you get bit, and that was just enough for me that I was just like, as soon as it got dark that night, I was terrified. So I was like, I swore off PlayStation. I was strictly N64, playing GoldenEye. Anything on 64 was safe. I wouldn't touch PlayStation because it had Resident Evil on it. I hated it. And my friend was trying to tell me about it one time, and I was asking him, but I was scared. I didn't want to see it. And my brother ended up borrowing a PlayStation from his friend and playing Resident Evil 2 because he wanted to play it. But he had to play it in his room because I wanted to be able to watch TV, and I didn't want to get scared because I knew I'd be stupid and watch. So I was asking my friends, like, step by step, like they were telling me about the zombies, and they were telling me about the liquor, like the liquor scene when you see the first liquor in Resident Evil 2. And somebody had it, like, step by step, they explained how the game went to me, and I was like, I could have recited it to you. I had so many questions, but I still wouldn't watch it. And I remember finally walking in, and I remember seeing my brother playing it, and I know what part he was in now. I didn't know it at the time, but he was in talking to the journalist guy who's locked up in the jail cell,
right?
And I said, okay, and I saw a single zombie. And I ran out of the room. I remember that. And I ran back upstairs, and I was like, I saw a zombie. I'm not scared. I'm okay. Like, it was just like a knee-jerk reaction. I ran upstairs, and I was like, I kind of want to see more. And the next day, like, my friends were like, that wasn't the scariest. Liquors are way scarier than the zombies. So by the end of it, like, after a day or two, I had another brave spurt, and I finally started watching my brother play a little bit more, maybe like 2 minutes. Okay. The next day, I started it up and started playing it myself, and I was shit-faced scared. I was like, this is like, didn't know I was walking into zombies and shooting everything. I was like, oh my God. But it was like, hey, this isn't scary. This is fun, and I finally caught that it's like the roller coaster effect. It's terrifying, but that's what makes it fun. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm not scared of this shit anymore. So after that, this is where that rite of passage came into me, and this is what it means for me. So it's like a deep thing for me, because suddenly I was like, I'm not scared of this shit anymore. I can play this. And I went back and played the first one, and then I went and played like Dino Crisis and Silent Hill, and I started playing any video game, like horror game, that you could get your hands on. And then I started watching horror movies. I was like, okay, I finally watched Friday the 13th movies, all of them. And then Nightmare on Elm Street, everything I could get my hands on, any low quality B movie. And trust me, the stuff that the video store that my brother worked at, the one that I went to all the time, they had stuff that would put Netflix to shame when it came to like shitty, like horror movie B movies.
Oh yeah.
They just had everything. It was insane, and I couldn't get enough of it. And this was all because of Resident Evil 2, and I finally just nutted up and got it. And I was like so proud of myself. So this, like, I knew that game inside out. I got up to unlock Tofu. I started playing it and getting like the perfect endings, or like the perfect ending, or ratings and all that. So it was just something I knew inside out. I had one of those Brady guides for it, and I found like 2 or 3 items in the game that weren't even listed in the Brady guide. That's how much I was playing it. Okay. So it's just,
I remember those stupid guides too, because my uncle was a PlayStation owner, and he bought all these survival games, and he always got the guide, always, no matter how useless it was, because they were often written before the game was out, right? So they got a beta part of the game. That's hilarious. The Brady guide, I forgot about them.
Oh man. Well, I remember too, because we traded. We had Resident Evil 2 we borrowed from a friend, my brother's like coworker at the video store, and he had the guide and the game, so we had the game and the guide. Not the greatest hits, but like the old-fashioned black label one.
Right.
I didn't even know that was a thing back then. And so he had our copy of GoldenEye, which I never did get back. So but I didn't care, because by then I was just hooked. So it was just, that's it. Like a whole new world for me.
Have you played the remake of that or no?
Yeah, that was my game of the year there for not this year, but last year.
Right, my memory sucks.
But that was the thing. Like I didn't go. I went in there completely blind. I said at least a dozen friends on Twitch playing it, and I wouldn't even go in and say hi. I was like, I can't do it. I remember telling them on Discord, I said, sorry man, I saw you playing it, I want to go in 100% blind. And they're like, oh no, that's cool. And so I finally got it just before Christmas, I remember, because it was like 50% off. So I finally got it for like $25-$30. I had it beaten in 2 days, and then I played through it again. I was just instantly like, they had it nailed. It was perfect.
Yeah, it sold amazingly well, and it was the thing for a couple months on Twitch. It was a very popular game, and it shows you what a touchstone it was for that generation of gamers who had the PlayStation. And like I've said before on past episodes, early PS graphics were not that great, but Resident Evil 2 with the pre-rendered backgrounds, it just looked great, right? And it just looked good.
It's like, you look at Final Fantasy VII and how poorly that's aged, but this one, it looked cool. Like it goes back and you can see, it's like, oh shit. Okay, you can see where the sprites are here and here's the backgrounds. But it was satisfying because it looked like realistic enough that you could picture it and pretend that it's real. Like, like they might as well have been just photography, So that's what it felt like as a kid. So
the only thing I didn't like about Resident Evil 2 was the ink ribbons for the typewriters, the save system. I hate, even though I know they give you enough of them, and I never had an issue with it playing any of those games. But in the back of my mind,
carry around,
that I couldn't save scum as much as I wanted.
Yeah.
Drove me nuts.
Yeah. And the thing, it was just a pain in the ass to actually, you'd have to go. I mean, most of the time there was always a box next to them that they're all connected so you could grab one. But it was always just a piss off because it's like, I want every bit of space I can for ammo.
Yeah. Well, that was a game where if you didn't have ammo, you're screwed. So you were constantly worried you're going to run out of bullets, and you would use other weapons just to use up the ammo and save the good stuff for later.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was, I can see why you'd hate the ink ribbons there. It was just enough that I was like, okay. But yeah, man, that's the top 5. If you ask me again tomorrow, I'll probably have a different list for you. I'm not going to lie. It'll be like Final Fantasy 4, Silent Hill 4, or Silent Hill 2, or it's just, again, it's Friday night. It's 10:56 my time as we record this. And these are the top 5 for me right now.
That's the thing, right? Like, favorite game lists change. Mine's the same way too, where it's just like this month it's XYZ. Next month I'll remember another game I played that I forgot all about, and I just remember how much I love it. And just, that's, lists are meant to be fluid, and that's perfectly fine. Right. I'm just shocked there's no Final Fantasy on there, though. I could have sworn 4 or 6 would have been on that list.
You know what? They will be. We'll do this again some other time, and I'll talk about them. But I've talked about Final Fantasy 4 enough on this podcast that I feel like the listeners deserve something different.
No, that's cool.
Most of the things that I've said about Final Fantasy 4 that I love about it, I've already said. So it's just, I don't want to beat that horse. I could talk about 6. I could talk about it, but I thought this was a good place to go. It just felt right.
All right.
So thanks for asking me to do this, Jake.
No, like you said earlier, like these lists are very personal, and I think it's really interesting to see how. I mean, look, 4 white guys on a podcast, we know. 3 of us are even bald, for fuck's sakes. I get it.
Yeah.
But our taste in games are actually quite varied when you break it down, and like your list is quite a bit different than mine. And I'm interested to see in Wolf's and GP's lists in the future.
Yeah.
All right.
Exactly. So yeah. So everybody, thank you again for listening. If anybody wants to join in on the conversation, please check us out. You can join us on our Discord. If you want to find it, the easy way to do it is go bit.ly/pressb to cancel. That'll help you join the Discord. And if you really want to support us and go the extra mile, you can also join our Patreon. So that's patreon.com/pressb to cancel. Just pay whatever you want, and we have a monthly episode where we just talk about movies, like movie commentary style. So check it out sometime. Maybe we'll throw some more on there, but in the meantime, that's what we're doing. So everybody, thank you so much.
Before we go, and if the other way you can support us, just, hit that subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts. The subscription, it's free on those podcast apps, and it actually does matter. And it helps with some of the planning we're doing. So if you haven't already, I know many of you have, but hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app. It does help us out a lot. And it's free.
Also, you can leave reviews if there's I know Apple for iTunes, iPod stuff, iPad stuff, whatever it is, the Apple stuff. If you can leave a review, that's great. Any way to support us like that, the clicks and likes and stuff, they really do add up. So thank you. So let's do this. All right, we're going to have to rope Werewolf or GP into the next one.
Yeah, for sure we have to.
Yeah.
Although GP's list is going to be Mega Man 1 through 4, I'm sure.
Mega Man 1 through 4 and Contra.
Yeah. Calling it now.
No. Mega Man 2, 3, 4, Contra, and Final Fantasy 4. Boom.
Yeah.
That's what I'm calling it now.
We got to write these predictions down. That's what we need to do.
Yeah, maybe I should beep this out so if he listens to this episode, he won't go spiteful and be like, "No, I knew you were going to say that." So, because he's done that to us. Goddamn Ninja Turtles!
I'm telling you. All right.
Thanks again, Jake.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya. Special thanks for music go to Arthur the Last Ancient on Spotify or The Last Ancient on Bandcamp. For more episodes, please visit our website at pressbtocancel.com. And also, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and check us out on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Patreon. As always, thank you. This has been
Press B to cancel.